What's up, Dragon Brood? I took a quick glance at what we have for today, and it looks like a weird selection of cards, but Dusmourn's kind of weird, so let's just hop right in and talk about the Irreverent Gremlin. It's a colorless and a red for a 2/2 Gremlin. It does have Menace, and when another creature you control power 2 or less enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. You can only do this once each turn. This is a randomly useful little guy. It's a gremlin and not a goblin, so that matters. It's a 2/2 for 2, which is okay. It doesn't have haste, but it does have menace. And it's a way to keep filtering cards. You can do this once a turn, but you basically just play a creature, discard draws, right? So you can always have something in your hand. Now, the question will be, is this any better than the other things red can play right now? I don't think so. So that's the tough part. Like, the design is really neat on this card, but getting extra cards is nice, but is it what plan is it supporting to help get you down the road? That's the thing I'd have to look at here. Obviously, we're in a world full of delirium and whatever, so maybe this matters in some worlds where you have a token maker and you're just trying to get stuff into the graveyard. But generally, there's probably going to be better stuff to do that. But yeah, it's a neat little card. Leyline of Mutation. It's a 4 mana enchantment, 2 green green. And if it's in your opening hand, you get to play it for free. You may pay Wooburg, white, blue, black, red, green, rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. This is one of those ones where it doesn't do a lot, but then it does everything. And what I mean by that is most decks will never even look at this and consider it because it's just not going to make a lot of sense, right? You have to be playing stuff, really, you have to be playing stuff that costs more than 5, right? And you have to be able to produce every color. So that's going to make it hard to use this in a lot of cases and not leave you a lot of room for benefits on it. So I'm not really sure where this fits. It's a neat card, and I'm sure the deck that ends up wanting it will really want it, and it'll be combo-licious, and it'll be great. But it's not one I would say you rush out to buy or craft because it's only going to go in probably 1 or 2 very specific decks. Not something I think you're just going to see played a whole bunch across the board. Wary Watchdog, a colorless and a green for a 3/1 dog. When it enters or dies, you surveil 1. Alright, this is just a cute little dude. It's a 3/1 for 2. It can surveil to put stuff in your graveyard. It's useful. Probably doesn't replace anything in like mono green or I say Gruul aggro. It's a cool dog if you're playing a dog themed deck for a commander. But yeah, this is just a decent limited card more than anything, I would think. Anthrope. Look at this thing in the artwork. It's like a weird beetle with 3 skull heads crossed with like one of those ornate Japanese Asian dragons. Like, I don't even know what's happening here. This is wild. But anyway, it's 3 colors and a green for a 3/4 insect with reach. When it enters, you may discard a card or pay 2 mana. When you do, destroy target room. Okay, this is useful, obviously. If the rooms become a big thing or room decks become a big thing, this is one of those ones where you can just pay 4, you get a 3/4 reach, discard a card, destroy a room. Or you can pay 6 and destroy a room and still have your 3/4 reach. So not efficient at doing what it's trying to do, and you can just destroy rooms with other cards, obviously. But in limited play, this is one you're probably going to want in your deck because rooms are going to show up quite a bit. As for constructed, unless you find a way to go hard on insects, I don't think this is something we're going to be playing with. Sideboard at best, and even that's pretty slim. Grab the prize. Colorless and a red, and this, if you have a fear of clowns, this is not good for you. Sorcery. As an additional cost to play the spell, you discard a card, you draw 2 cards. If the discarded card wasn't a land, grab the prize deals 2 damage to each opponent. Okay, so this is basically like all the other red cards, pay to discard, draw. But if you discard something that wasn't a land, this shocks each opponent for 2 damage. So this is a little bit better. Well, it is a sorcery. It's not an instant, so that's something to consider. But you could potentially get damage out of it. So this could be kind of fun and kind of interesting. Now, those cards just go into your hand, so nothing too surprising there. It's sort of what you expect, how it would work. But yeah, this one's one I'm going to have to think on a little bit. It feels like there's some room to play a card like this. And even some of the aggro decks that want a way to draw cards, this could possibly be some damage on the top. Like, I don't know. But I do like that this is a different spin on this card type that we seem to get every few sets. Final Vengeance. 1 black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or enchantment. Exile target creature. Alright. I mean, if you have tokens to sacrifice or random enchantments of a whole variety, I mean, we're playing a bunch right now already with the talents, and there's going to be a bunch of creatures that happen to be enchantments. Also, you don't mind if you're trying to get stuff back into the graveyard for delirium purposes. So this probably has a little wiggle room. I don't think this is something most decks are going to play, though, because you still have Cut Down, you still have Go for the Throat, you still have a whole variety of things that are 1 and 2 mana options to destroy creatures. So I don't think this is it. However, exiling is kind of sweet. It keeps it from going to the graveyard, especially with the stuff we've seen that can be recurred, and again, reducing people's options for delirium. So definitely some uses. You probably play this in limited play just because you do have the option to get rid of some 1/1 or 2/2 you played 4 turns ago, 5 turns ago. That's no value to you anymore. So that's fine. But yeah, constructed play, pretty slim that you're going to play this except for in some very specific situations. Tunnel Surveyor, 2 colorless and a blue for a 2/2. Human Detective. Oh, another detective. I had noticed that. When Tunnel Surveyor enters, create a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token. Well, this is exactly the type of card you want, right? It's a 3 mana 2/2. It makes an additional 1/1. The 1/1 happens to be both a Glimmer and an enchantment, which matter for several cards. Good value here. If you had a way to play it multiple times or bounce it and replay it, there's probably some real value, especially if you're also triggering because an enchantment entered the battlefield. So pretty nice here. Overall, not a power card, but I could see some decks that might want something like this. Unsettling Twins. Yeah, you gotta have the creepy kids in some of these movies. 3 colorless and a white, 2/2 human. When Unsettling Twins enters, you manifest Dread. Oh, that's cute. So you get a 2/2, then manifest Dread, some other thing as a 2/2. So your 4 mana got you 2/2 twins. Though one of them's like the evil creepy twin. Alright, I can get behind this card design. Great, not really. Reasonable and limited, because again, you're getting 2/2 bodies for 4 mana. It's a good design. It's really fun. I like the concept. Probably not going to play with it in standard, though. Emerge from the Cocoon. This is expensive. 4 colorless and a white for sorcery. Exile target creature card from your graveyard. Oh, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. There we go. That's the sentence. And you gain 3 life. So this is a reanimation spell for 5 mana, and you get 3 life. This is reasonable, actually. There are some decks that even in constructed play would play this. I don't know if 5 is the right number, because again, pretty much all the reanimator spells we get tend to be 4 or 5 mana. The 5 mana ones have a little bit of some upside. In this case, you get to gain 3 life, so that's a nice bonus. Yeah, this is, again, if you're doing specifically reanimation things, this is a decent reanimation option. It's not crazy, but it's playable. Are you going to want to lean on that with the other options that are available? I think it remains to be seen, because you're going to be probably playing black on some level, and there's better black options. But if for some reason you're only mostly playing white or a white heavy, this isn't terrible to consider. Orphans of the Wheat. It's a knockoff of Children of the Corn. We have the Orphans of the Wheat. That is hilarious. All right, so colorless and the white for a 2/1 human. Whenever Orphans of the Wheat attacks, tap any number of untapped creatures you control. Orphans of the Wheat gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature tapped this way. Oh, there's a lot to unpack here. All right, so it's a 2 mana 2/1. It can be larger for the number of creatures you have. You have to tap some number of untapped creatures. +1/+1 only lasts until end of the turn. But there are some scenarios where if you have like survivors, the survivors would now get bonuses because you found another way to tap them. Oh, I don't think this is really a playable card. At least not for constructed. But there's at least a couple of corner case uses for it. So I'm not going to say you'll never see this card. But I don't think it's what most aggro decks are going to be trying to do. Dashing Bloodsucker. 3 colorless and a black for a 2/5 vampire warrior. And it has Eerie whenever an enchantment enters or you unlock a room. It gets +2/+0 and gains lifelink to end a turn. Yeah, we're definitely not playing this in constructed play. Like, it's 4 mana for only a 2/5. You can do so much better at 4 mana right now in standard. The upside's okay, but it's not even great. You turn it into a 4/5. You can attack with it, gain some life. It's nice for limited. I definitely would play it there, but I'm probably not playing this in constructed. Unstoppable Slasher. Is this a weird, like, zombie guy with a saw blade arm? Man, the art in this set's crazy. All right, Unstoppable Slasher, 2 colorless and a black for a 2/3 zombie assassin with Death Touch. All right, so this is already okay. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they lose half their life rounded up. Well, Jeebus, that's a thing. And when it dies, if it had no counters on it, you return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control with 2 stun counters on it. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's the unstoppable part of the slasher. Wow. So 3 mana 2/3 zombie assassin, 2 creature types that do matter, especially this year for Commander after Assassin's Creed and stuff. It does have Death Touch, so that's an upside. Man, there's a lot going on with this card. If you let it through and you don't chump block it, you lose half your life. So that's an issue. If they make this unblockable, that's also a thing, to lose half your life. Yeah, I don't know where this card fits, but it's definitely going to get played. I mean, you already could play a deck now with 4 or 5 different quality creatures that have Death Touch in mono black anyway. So, yeah, this is... This is a solid card. This is a solid card. I don't know where it's going to pop up, but man, this is going to be a nuisance. Silent Hall Creeper. Colorless. And man, this is just... Like, this is the creepy thing you don't want to see in a tunnel somewhere. Colorless and a blue for a 1/1 horror. It's an enchantment creature. It can't be blocked. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose one of the following that hasn't been chosen. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on this card. You can draw a card, or it becomes a copy of another creature you control. So it connects once, and then you have a 3/3, or get to draw a card. Then it connects again, you're probably getting the other option you didn't choose. And then on the 3rd time, if it's still there, you're probably just copying something else you played on turn 4 or turn 5. So you just have a bigger thing that's unblockable. Oh no, it becomes a copy of another target creature. So I guess you would lose your unblockability. Oh man, this card's pretty strong. The fact that it's an enchantment creature makes it reasonable for more decks than it would probably otherwise be. It's a horror, which will probably matter at some point when we see the rest of the set. Yeah, I think this card's just solid. Creepy artwork, but very cool card. Popular Egotist, 2 colorless and a black for a 3/2. You can pay a color, or it's a human rogue. You can pay a colorless and a black, sacrifice another creature or enchantment. This gains indestructible to end of turn, and you tap it. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, target opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. Okay, so this is like the 3rd card I think we've already seen this set that cares about gaining life, losing life, you sacrificing things. So obviously this is a sub-theme in the set, for sure, right? No surprise there. This fits a variety of decks. It's only 2 mana to sacrifice another permanent. If you have stuff that comes back from the graveyard or triggers from things going to the graveyard, this is good for that. Not going to say this is a standard crusher by any stretch. I mean, it's a 3 mana 3/2, which isn't the greatest thing. But if you're playing that type of deck, this is an easy include for that. And it does get indestructible when you sacrifice something. That's not nothing. You know, and it protects itself effectively from a lot of the sweepers. So, yeah, this is playable. I'm not going to call it crazy good, but definitely playable. And if you're playing any of the aristocrat-style decks, this is a real option. Fear of Infinity. Who has a Fear of Infinity? Like, is that an actual... Hold on a second. I gotta go to the internet. All right, also the internet tells me Fear of Infinity is called Apeirophobia. Apeirophobia. apeirophobia, which comes from the ancient Greek word apeiros, meaning infinite or boundless. It's considered one of the most abstract phobias and can manifest as a fixation on the endlessness of space and time. Okay, that makes sense. So it's not like infinity of just like there being an infinite amount of things. It's that it's a fear of the vastness of the world, of our being, I guess. So, all right, cool. That's a real phobia. Now we learned something. So anyway, fear of infinity is colorless, blue-black, 2/2, enchantment creature nightmare. It has flying and lifelink. It can't block. And it has eerie. Whenever an enchantment enters or you unlock a room, you may return Fear of Infinity from your graveyard to your hand. Wow, okay, so a 3 mana 2/2 with flying and lifelink. If it dies, when you have another enchantment enter, you can return it to your hand. This is a weird card, but there has to be room for something like this. I can't imagine this is completely unplayable. There's enough good... Now, it can't block, so that is an issue. But there are enough good words going on here that I'm definitely putting it in my limited decks, you know, when I draft or sealed. But it might be some fringe corner case constructed playable, too. The Roller Crusher Ride. Okay, well, I guess there had to be a roller coaster thing in here. So, here we go. It's X2 and red. So, we'll see what this all means. It's a legendary enchantment. Already means it's going to be powerful. If you have Delirium, which is if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player, while there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, it deals double that damage instead. And then the X on this is when it enters, it deals X damage to each of up to X target creatures. Oh my gosh. All right. So let's look at both parts here. So the first part says, basically, if you have anything that would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or to a player, which is weird that we make that distinction, so that's basically to anything, I guess. While there are 4 or more card types in your graveyard, so you have Delirium, it deals double that damage. The second part is just dealing X to up to X target creatures, right? So let's say we're paying 6. So we're going to deal 3 damage to each of up to 3 different things. This is interesting because it does say creatures as far as what you can deal damage to with the X. So you can't just use this as a finisher on the opponent. But you could pay 6, get rid of 3 creatures, but you may not even have to pay 6 because the damage is going to be doubled from its own thing. So if they're all 4 toughness or less, you could pay 5. Well, no, because you pay 5 and then you're only dealing 4 damage to 2 things. Man, this is this is a silly card. So if you pay 6, you're effectively dealing potentially 6 damage to 3 different things. Or pay 5 and deal 4 damage to 2 different things. I hope that's easy enough for y'all to follow. Like it's X is basically the number of targets, and then X is also that number of damage times 2. So this card, though, all that said, this card is actually pretty solid. I mean, this is one of those things that could end up being a mid-rangey deck's board wiper, effectively, especially if you're ramping. It just allows you to keep creatures off the board fairly cheaply. I mean, I'm thinking about stuff I can do with Roxanne with this, right? So now each of the, what do you call it? The meteorites coming into play automatically deal 4. So that's a thing now. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that could come from this card. Like, very interesting, for sure. Marina Vell's Grimoire. I don't know who Marina Vell is. I'm sure it's a story thing. No need to leave it in the comments because I'm probably not going to follow up on the story stuff. 5 colorless and a blue. Legendary artifact. Marina Vell's Grimoire enters. If you cast it, draw 5 cards. So if you pay 6, you get 5 cards. You have no maximum hand size. You don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. Whenever you gain life, you draw that many cards. Whenever you lose life, discard that many cards. Then if you have no cards in hand, you lose the game. Okay, that's the kicker. I was like, wait a minute, where's the downside on this? Okay, so you can gain life and keep getting a bunch of cards, which obviously eventually you will run out of cards in your library. But if you lose life, so if your opponent's still attacking you or whatever, you're discarding cards in hand. So if you run out of cards, you lose. This is a crazy kind of all-in card. What I would be interested in seeing with this card is if it lends itself to being part of some type of combo, right? Where maybe you ramp up, you pay your 6, you draw 5, maybe you're discarding card for some amount of resources, whether it's damage, mana, whatever, and it's triggering something where you can gain life, so you're just going through cards. Like, I don't know what the payoff would be, but this feels like it's probably some type of combo-y piece. I don't know what the parts would all look like yet, but that's my first blush looking at this card. It's just like, that's probably what I'm trying to do with it, but there's probably something even simpler than that I'm just not thinking of right now. But yeah, weird card. Would be a lot of fun to play against this if somebody had it in Commander, though. Wow, Fear of Burning Alive. Crazy. 4 colorless, red, enchantment creature nightmare. 4/4. Whenever it enters, it deals 4 damage to each opponent. Okay. And then if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, Fear of Burning Alive deals that amount of damage to target creature that player controls. Okay, so whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, it would then deal that much damage to a creature. Okay, that's interesting. A lot of times it's the way around. You deal damage to the creature, and then something happens to the opponent. This is the opposite of hit the opponent, and then you can hit one of their creatures. And then when this comes into play, it deals 4 straight up to each opponent, not to a creature, but 4 damage is still a lot. Oh man, where does this belong? I don't know if we're going to play this or not. It is 6 mana. That is a lot considering what you get for 6. However, the upside is still not something to turn your nose up at. It is a 4/4 body. You deal 4 damage. Possibly get to kill a creature as well, because you're going to deal 4 to the opponent. 4 is going to kill a significant number of creatures. Love this card in Limited. Not going to lie. Like, this card, not going to say, well, that's not true. Sometimes it might be a game breaker in Limited, depending on the situation. For constructed play, though, I'm going to be hard-pressed, probably, to put this in any real number of decks, to be truthful. Cynical Loner, colorless and a black for a 3/1 human survivor. It can't be blocked by glimmers, so that's cool. And the survival is at the beginning of your second main phase. If it's tapped, you may search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. Man, these survivor cards. I think so far of the survivor cards, this is probably the best one. Just being able to pluck what you want, put it into your graveyard, so that you're building your delirium. You can maybe reanimate something, whatever. Right now, so far, it still feels like our best uses for survivors are to, in story fashion, have them ride a mount or drive a vehicle to try to get away, right? That would make sense. But if you are, this is probably the most upside on any of them. I'm just not sure what the rest of the deck looks like yet that would want this particular card. And it is only 1 toughness, which is a drawback, sadly. The other downside is it's your second main phase, not the second main phase of the turn. So you can't really use these survivors, say, defensively to crew a vehicle and block, right? I mean, you can still do that, but you don't get the survival bonus. So you kind of have to leave yourself a little bit tapped out on your turn, which is my concern about the mechanic. So while this card's interesting, I think there is a world or two this fits in, and you might want this card particularly, but I can't say it's great. That's more because of how the survival mechanic operates, I believe. All right, y'all, I gotta ask, what do you think about the roller coaster, and what do you think about this green ley line? Like, am I overestimating the roller coaster? Am I underestimating the ley line? Let me know, because I feel like I might be a little on both ends on both those cards. But hey, I'm going to link the other videos from yesterday, so if you missed it, you can get caught up on all the previews, because there's been a bunch. But that's all of you for now. We'll see you next time.